The End by Guy de Maupassant. All were crowding around Monsieur Bermutier, the judge, who was giving his opinion about the Saint-Cloud mystery. For a month, this inexplicable crime had been the talk of Paris. Nobody could make head or tail of it. Monsieur Bermutier, standing with his back to the fireplace, was talking, citing the evidence, discussing the various theories, but arriving at no conclusion. Some women had risen in order to get nearer to him and were standing with their eyes fastened on the clean-shaved face of the judge, who was saying such weighty things. They were shaking and trembling, moved by fear and curiosity, and by the eager and insatiable desire for the horrible, which owns the soul of every woman. One of them, paler than the others, said during a pause, "It's terrible. It verges on the supernatural. The truth will never be known." The judge turned to her. "True, madam. It is likely that the actual facts will never be discovered. As for the word supernatural which you have just used, it has nothing to do with the matter. We are in the presence of a very cleverly conceived and executed crime, so well enshrouded in mystery that we cannot disentangle it from the involved circumstances which surround it. But once I had to take charge of an affair in which the uncanny seemed to play a part. In fact, the case became so confused that it had to be given up." Several women exclaimed at once, "Oh, tell us about it." Monsieur Bermutier smiled in a dignified manner, as a judge should, and went on. "Do not think, however, that I, for 1 minute, ascribed anything in the case to supernatural influences. I believe only in normal causes. But if, instead of using the word supernatural to express what we do not understand, we were simply to make use of the word inexplicable, it would be much better. At any rate, in the affair of which I am about to tell you, it is especially the surrounding preliminary circumstances which impressed me. Here are the facts. I was at the time a judge at Ajaccio, a little white city on the edge of a bay which is surrounded by high mountains. The majority of the cases which came up before me concerned vendettas. There are some that are superb, dramatic, ferocious, heroic. We find there the most beautiful cause for revenge of which one could dream of, empties and dread of years old, quieted for a time but never extinguished. Abominable stratagem, murders becoming massacres, and almost deeds of glory. For 2 years I heard of nothing but the price of blood, of this terrible Corsican prejudice which compels revenge for insult meted out to the offending person, and all is descendant and relative. I had seen old men, children, cousins murdered, My head was full of these stories. One day, I learned that an Englishman had just hired a little villa at the end of the bay for several years. He had brought with him a French servant, whom he had engaged on the way at Marseille. Soon, this peculiar person living alone, only going out to hunt and fish, aroused a widespread interest. He never spoke to anyone, never went to the town, and every morning he would practice for an hour or so with his revolver and rifle. Legends were built around him. It was said that he was some high personage fleeing from his fatherland for political reasons. Then it was affirmed that he was hiding after having committed some abominable crime. Some particularly horrible circumstances were even mentioned. In my judicial position, I thought it necessary to get some information about this man, but it was impossible to learn anything. He called himself Sir John Rowell. I therefore had to be satisfied with watching him as closely as I could, but I could see nothing suspicious about his action. However, as rumors about him were growing and becoming widespread, I decided to try to see the stranger myself, and I began to hunt regularly in the neighborhood of his ground. For a long time I watched without finding an opportunity. At last, it came to me in the shape of a partridge, which I shot and killed right in front of the Englishman. My dog fetched it for me, but taking the bird, I went at once to Sir John Rowell, and begging his pardon, asked him to accept it. He was a big man with red hair and beard, very tall, very broad, a kind of calm and polite Hercules. He had nothing of the so-called British stiffness, and in a broad English accent he thanked me warmly for my attention. At the end of a month, we had had 5 or 6 conversations. One night at last, as I was passing before his door, I saw him in the garden, seated astride of a chair, smoking his pipe. I bowed, and he invited me to come in and have a glass of beer. I needed no urging. He received me with the most punctilious English courtesy, sang the praise of France and of Corsica, and declared that he was quite in love with this country. Then, with great caution and under the guise of vivid interest, I asked him a few questions about his life and his plans. He answers me without embarrassment, telling me that he had travelled a great deal in Africa, in the Indies, in America. He added, laughing. I have had many adventures. Then I turned the conversation on hunting, and he gave me the most curious detail on hunting: the hippopotamus, the tiger, the elephant, and even the gorilla. I said, "Are all these animals dangerous?" He smiled. "Oh no, man is the worst." And he laughed a good broad laugh, the wholesome laugh of a contented Englishman. "I've also frequently been man-hunting." Then he began to talk about weapons, and invited me to come in and see different make of guns. His parlour was draped in black silk embroidered in gold, big yellow flower, as brilliant as fire, were worked on the dark material, he said. It is Japanese material. But in the middle of the wildest panel, a strange thing attracted my attention. A black object stood out against a square of red velvet. I went up to it. It was a hand, a human hand, not a clean white hand of skeleton, but a dried black hand with yellow nails, the muscles exposed, and traces of old blood on the bones, which were cut off as clean as thought it had been chopped off with an axe near the middle of the forearm. Around the wrist, an enormous iron chain riveted and soldered to this unclean member fastened it to the wall by a ring strong enough to hold an elephant in leash. I asked, What is that? The Englishman answered quietly, That is my best enemy. It comes from America too. The bones were severed by a sword and the skin cut off with a sharp stone and dried in the sun for a week. I touched these human remains, which must have belonged to a giant. The uncommonly long finger were touched by enormous tendon, which still had pieces of skin hanging to them in places. This hand was terrible to see. It made one think of some savage vengeance. I said, This man must have been very strong. The Englishman answered quietly, Yes, but I was stronger than he. I put on this chain to hold him. I thought that he was joking. I said, This chain is useless now. The end won't run away. Sir John Rowell answered seriously, It always wants to go away. The chain is needed. I glanced at him quickly, questioning his face, and I asked myself, Is he an insane man or a practical joker? But his face remained inscrutable, calm and friendly. I turned to the other subject and admired his rifles. However, I noticed that he kept a freeloaded revolver in the room, as though constantly in fear of some attack. I paid him several calls, then I did not go any more. People had become used to his presence. Everybody had lost interest in him. A whole year rolled by. One morning, towards the end of November, my servant awoke me and announced that Sir John Rowell had been murdered during the night. Half an hour later, I entered the Englishman's house, together with the police commissioner and the captain of the gendarmes. The servant, bewildered and in despair, was crying before the door. At first I suspected this man, but he was innocent. The guilty party could never be found. On entering Sir John's parlour, I noticed the body stretched out on its back in the middle of the room. His vest was torn. The sleeve of his jacket had been pulled off. Everything pointed to a violent struggle. The Englishman had been strangled. His face was black, swollen and frightful, and seemed to express a terrible fear. He held something between his teeth and his neck, pierced by 5 or 6 holes, which looked as though they had been made by some iron instrument, was covered with blood. A physician joined us. examined the finger marks on the neck for a long time, and then made this strange announcement. "It looks as though he had been strangled by a skeleton." A cold chill seemed to run down my back, and I looked over to where I had formerly seen the terrible hand. It was no longer there. The chain was hanging down, broken. I bent over the dead man, and in his contracted mouth I found one of the fingers of this vanished hand, cut, or rather sawed off by the teeth down to the second knuckle. Then the investigation began. Nothing could be discovered. No door, window, or piece of furniture had been forced. The two watchdogs had not been aroused from their sleep. Here, in a few words, is the testimony of the servant. For a month his master had seemed excited. He had received many letters which he would immediately burn. Often, in a fit of passion, which approached madness, he had taken a switch and struck wildly at this dried hand riveted to the wall, and which had disappeared, no one knows how, at the very hour of the crime. He would go to bed very late and carefully lock himself in. He always kept weapons within reach. Often at night he would talk loudly as though he was quarrelling with someone. That night somehow he had made no noise, and it was only on going to open the window that the servant had found Sir John murdered. He suspected no one. I communicated what I knew of the dead man to the judge and public official. Throughout the whole island, a minute investigation was carried on. Nothing could be found out. One night, about 3 months after the crime, I had a terrible nightmare. I seemed to see the horrible hand running over my curtains and walls like an immense scorpion or spider. 3 times I awoke. 3 times I went to sleep again. 3 times I saw the hideous object galloping round my room and moving its fingers like legs. The following day, the end was brought to me, found in the cemetery on the grave of Sir John Rowell, who had been buried there because we had been unable to find his family. The first finger was missing. Ladies, there is my story. I know nothing more. The women, deeply stirred, were pale and trembling. One of them explained, "But that is neither a climax nor an explanation. We will be unable to sleep unless you give us your opinion on what occurred." The judge smiled severely. "Oh, ladies, I shall certainly spoil your terrible dream. I simply believe that the legitimate owner of the end was not dead, that he came to get it with his remaining one. But I don't know, it was a kind of vendetta." One of the women murmured, "No, it can't be that." And the judge, still smiling, said, "Didn't I tell you that my explanation would not satisfy you?" A Tress of Hair by Maupassant. Original French title, La Chevelure de Maupassant. The walls of the cells were bare and whitewashed. A narrow grated window, placed so high that one could not reach it, lighted this sinister little room. The mad inmate, seated on a straw chair, looked at us with a fixed, vacant, and haunted expression. He was very thin, with hollow cheeks and hair almost white, which one guessed might have turned grey in a few months. His clothes appeared to be too large for his shrunken limbs, his sunken chest and empty pouch. One felt that this man's mind was destroyed, eaten by his thoughts, by one thought, just as a fruit is eaten by a worm. His craze, his idea, was there in his brain, insistent, harassing, destructive. It wasted his frame little by little. It, the invisible, impalpable, intangible, immaterial idea, was mining his health, drinking his blood, snuffing out his life. What a mystery was this man, being killed by an ideal. He aroused sorrow, fear, and pity, this madman. What strange, tremendous, and deadly thought dwelt within this forehead, which decreased with deep wrinkles, which were never still. "He has terrible attacks of rage," said the doctor to me. "His is one of the most peculiar cases I've ever seen. He has seizure of erotic and macabresque madness. He is a sort of necrophile. He has kept a journal in which he sets forth his disease with the utmost clearness. In it you can, as if it were, put your finger on it. If it would interest you, you may go over this document." I followed the doctor into his office, where he handed me this wretched man's diaries, saying, "Read it and tell me what you think of it." I read as follows. "Until the age of 32, I lived peacefully without knowing love. Life appeared very simple, very pleasant, and very easy. I was rich. I enjoyed so many things that I had no passion for anything in particular. It was good to be alive. I woke happy every morning and did those things that pleased me during the day, and went to bed at night contented, in the expectation of a peaceful tomorrow and a future without anxiety. I had had a few flirtations without my heart being touched by any true passion, or wounded by any of the sensation of true love. It is good to live like that. It is better to love, but it is terrible. And yet, those who love in the ordinary way must experience ardent happiness, though less than mine possibly, for love came to me in a remarkable manner. As I was healthy, I bought all kinds of old furniture and old curiosity, and I often thought of the unknown hands that had touched this object, of the eyes that had admired them, of the arts that had loved them. For one does love things. I sometimes remained hours and hours looking at a little watch of the last century. It was so tiny, so pretty, with its enamel and gold chasing, and it kept time, as on the day when a woman first brought it, and raptured at owning this
dainty trinket. It had not ceased to vibrate, to live its mechanical life, and it had kept up its regular tick-tock since the last century. Who had first worn it on her bosom, amid the warmth of her clothing, the art of the watch beating beside the art of the woman? What end had held it in its warm finger? I turned it over and then whipped the animal shepherd on the case to remove the slightest moisture from her fingers. What eyes had watched the ends on its ornamental face for the unexpected, the beloved, the sacred hour? How I wished I had known her, seen her, the woman who had selected this exquisite and rare object. She is dead. I am possessed with a longing for women of former days. I love from afar all those who have loved. The story of those dead and gone loves fills me, my heart, with regrets. All the beauty, the smiles, the youthful caresses, the hopes, should not all that be eternal? How I have wept whole nights thinking of those poor women of former days, so beautiful, so loving, so sweet, whose arms were extended in an embrace, and who now are dead. A kiss is immortal. It goes from lips to lips, from century to century, from age to age. Men receive them, give them, and die. The past attracts me, the present terrifies me because the future means death. I regret all that has gone by. I mourn all who have lived. I should like to check time, to stop the clock, but time goes. It goes, it passes, it takes from me each second of a little of myself from the annihilation of tomorrow, and I shall never live again. Farewell, you women of yesterday. I love you. But I am not to be pitied. I found her, the one I was waiting for, and through her I enjoyed inestimable pleasure. I was sauntering in Paris on a bright Sunday morning with a happy heart and a high step, looking in at the shop windows with the vague interest of an idler. All at once I noticed in the shop of a dealer in antique a piece of Italian furniture of the 17th century. It was very handsome, very rare. I set it down as being the work of a Venetian artist named Vitali, who was celebrated in his days. I went on my way. Why did the remembrance of that piece of furniture haunt me with such insistence that I retraced my step? I again stopped before the shop in order to take another look at it, and I felt that it tempted me. What a singular thing temptation is! One gazes at an object, and little by little it charms you. It disturbs you, it fills your thought, as a woman face might do. The enchantment of it penetrates your being, a strange enchantment of form, colour, and appearance of an animate object. And one loves it, One desires it. One wishes to have it. A longing to own it takes possession of you, gently at first, as though it were timid, but growing, becoming intense, irresistible. And the dealers seem to guess. From your hardened gaze, your secret and increasing longing. I brought this piece of furniture and had it sent home at once. I placed it in my room. Oh, I am sorry for those who do not know the honeymoon of the collector with the antique he has just purchased. One looks at it tenderly and passes one's hand over it as if it were human flesh. One comes back to it every moment. One is always thinking of it. Wherever one goes, whatever one do, the dear recollection of it pursues you in the street, in society, everywhere, and when you return home at night before taking off your gloves or your hat, you go and look at it with the tenderness of a lover. Truly, for 8 days, I worshipped this piece of furniture. I opened its door and pulled out the drawers every few moments. I handled it with rapture, with all the intense joy of possession. But one evening I surmised, while I was feeling the thickness of one of the panels, that there must be a secret drawer in it. My heart began to beat, and I spent the night trying to discover this secret cavity. I succeeded on the following day by driving a knife into a slit in the wood. A panel slid back, and I saw, spread out on a piece of black velvet, a magnificent tress of hair. Yes, a woman's hair, an immense coil of fair hair, almost red, which must have been cut off close to the head, tied with a golden cord. I stood amazed, trembling, confused. An almost imperceptible perfume, so ancient that it seemed to be the spirit of a perfume, issued from this mysterious drawer and this remarkable relic. I lifted it gently, almost reverently, and took it out of its hiding place. It at once unwound in a golden shower that reached to the floor, dense but light, soft and gleaming like the tail of a comet. A strange emotion filled me. What was this? When? How? Why? Had this hair been shut up in this drawer? What adventure, what tragedy did this souvenir conceal? Who had cut it off? A lover on a day of farewell? A husband on a day of revenge? Or the one whose head it had graced on the day of despair? Was it as she was about to take the veil that they had cast thither that love drowry as a pledge to the world of the living? Was it when they were going to nail down the coffin of the beautiful young corpse that the one who had adored her had cut off her tresses, the only thing that he could retain of her, the only living part of her body that would not suffer decay, the only thing he could still love and caress and kiss in his paroxysm of grief? was it not strange that this Tress should remain as it was in life, when not an atom of the body on which it grew was in existence? It fell over my fingers, tickled the skin with a singular caress, the caress of a dead woman. It affected me so that I felt as though I should weep. I held it in my hand for a long time. Then it seemed as if it disturbed me, as though something of the soul had remained in it. And I put it back on the velvet, rusty from age, and pushed it in the drawer, closed the door of the empty cabinet, and went on for a walk to meditate. I walked along, filled with sadness and also with unrest. That unrest that one feels when in love. I felt as though I must have lived before, as though I must have known this woman. And Villon lines came to my mind like a sob. Tell me where and in what place is Flora the beautiful Roman, Hipparchia and Thais, who was her cousin German. Echo answers in the breeze of the river and lake that blows. The beauty was above all praise, but where are last year's snows? The queen, white as lilies, who sang as sing the birds, Bertha, Broadfoot, Beatrice, Alice, Ermengarde, Princess of Maine, and Joanne de Good Lorraine, burned by the English at Rouen. Where are they, Virgin Queen, and where are last year's snows? When I got home again, I felt an irresistible longing to see my singular treasure, and I took it out. And as I touched it, I felt a shiver go all through me. For some days, however, I was in my ordinary condition, although the thought of that tress of hair was always present to my mind. Whenever I came into the house, I had to see it and take it in my hands. I turned the key of the cabinet with the same hesitation that one opens the door leading to one's beloved, for in my hands and my heart I felt a confused, singular, constant sensual longing to plunge my hand in the enchanting golden flood of those dead tresses. Then, after I had finished caressing it and had locked the cabinet, I felt as if it were a living thing shut up in there, imprisoned, and I longed to see it again. I felt again the imperious desire to take it in my hands, to touch it, to even feel uncomfortable at the cold, slippery, irritating, bewildering contact. I lived thus for a month or two. I forgot how long. It obsessed me, haunted me. I was happy and tormented by turns, as when one falls in love and after the first vows have been exchanged. I shut myself in the room, with it to feel it on my skin, to bury my lips in it, to kiss it. I wound it round my face, covered my eyes with the golden flood, so as to see the day gleam through its gold. I loved it. Yes, I loved it. I could not be without it, nor pass an hour without looking at it. And I waited. For what? I do not know. For her. One night I woke up suddenly feeling as though I were not alone in my room. I was alone, nevertheless, but I could not go to sleep again. And as I was tossing about feverishly, I got up to look at the golden tress. It seemed softer than usual, more lifelike. Do the dead come back? I almost lost consciousness as I kissed it. I took it back with me to bed and pressed it to my lips as if it were my sweetheart. Do the dead come back? She came back. Yes, I saw her. I held her in my arm, just as she was in life, tall, fair and round. She came back every evening, the dead woman, the beautiful, adorable, mysterious unknown. My happiness was so great that I could not conceal it. No lover ever tasted such intense, terrible enjoyment. I loved her so well that I could not be separated from her. I took her with me, always and everywhere. I walked about the town with her as if she were my wife, and took her to the theatre, always to a private box. But they saw her. They guessed. They arrested me. They put me in prison, like a criminal. They took her. Oh, misery. Here, the manuscript stopped, and I suddenly raised my astonished eyes to the doctor. A terrific cry, a howl of impotent rage and exasperated longing resounded through the asylum. "Listen," said the doctor. "We have to dose the obscene madman with water 5 times a day. Sergeant Bertrand was the only one who was in love with the dead." Filled with astonishment, horror, and pity, I stammered out, But the Tress, did it really exist?" The doctor rose, opened a cabinet full of files and instruments, and tossed over a long tress of fair hair, which flew towards me like a golden bird. I shivered at feeling its soft, light touch on my hand, and I sat there, my heart beating with disgust and desire. Disgust, as at the contact of anything accessory to a crime, and desire, as at the temptation of some infamous and mysterious thing. The doctor said, as he shrugged his shoulder, "The mind of man is capable of anything." Le Horla, by Guy de Maupassant. The Horla by Guy de Maupassant. Translated from French by Albert M. C. McMaster, Anderson, Quesada, and others. May 8. What a glorious day! I have spent the whole morning lying on the grass in front of my house, under the enormous plane tree that forms a complete covering, shelter, and shade for it. I love this country, and I love living here because it is here I have my roots. Those deep down, slender roots that hold a man to the place where his forefathers were born and died, hold him to ways of thoughts and habits of eating, to custom as to particular foods, to local fashions of speech, to the intonation of country voice, to the scent of the soil, the villages, and the very air itself. I love this house of mine where I grew up. From my windows I see the Seine flowing alongside my garden. Beyond the high road, almost at my door, the great white Seine running from Rouen to Havre, covered with passing boat. Away to the left, Rouen, the widespread town, with its blue roofs lying under the bristling host of Gothic belfries. They are beyond numbers, frail or sturdy, dominated by leaden steeple of the cathedral, and filled with bells that rings out in the limpid air of fine mornings, sending me the sweet and far-off murmurs of their iron tongues. A brazen song, borne to me on the breeze, now louder, now softer, as it swells or dies away. Ah, beautiful this morning has been. Towards 11 o'clock, a long convoy of boats followed each other past my gate, behind a squat tug looking like a flag, whizzing painfully as it vomited thick clouds of smoke. After 2 English yachts, whose crimson awning rose and fell against the sky, came a splendid 3-masted Brazilian, all white, gloriously clean and glittering. The sight of this ship filled me with such joy that I saluted her. I don't know why. May 11. I have had a slight fever for the last few days. I feel ill, or rather unhappy. Whence come these mysterious influences that change our happiness to dejection and our self-confidence to discouragement? It is as if the unseen air, were full of unknowable powers whose mysterious nearness we endure. I wake full of joy, my throat swelling with a longing to sing. Why? I go down to the waterside, and suddenly, after a short walk, I come back home wretched, as if some misfortune were waiting me there. Why? As a chill shudder passing lightly over my skin, shaken my nerves and darkened my spirit, have the shapes of the clouds, or the colour of the day, the ever-changing colour of the visible world, troubled my mind as they slipped past my eyes? Does anyone know? Everything that surrounds us, everything that we see unseeing, everything that we brush past unknowing, everything that we touch impalpably, everything that we meet unnoticing, has on us, on the organs of our bodies, and through them on our thoughts, on our very heart, swift, surprising, and inexplicable effect. how deep it is, this mystery of the invisible. We cannot fathom it with our miserable senses, with our eyes that perceive neither the too small, nor the too great, nor the too near, nor the too distant, nor the inhabitants of a star, nor the inhabitants of a drop of water. With our ears that deceive us, transmitting the vibration of the air to us as sonorous sounds. There are fairies who by a miracle transmute movement into sound, from which metamorphosis music is born, and make audible in song the mute quivering of nature. With our smell, feebler than a dog's, with our taste, that can only just detect the age of wine. If only we had other organs to work other miracles on our behalf. What things we could discover round us. May 16. I'm certainly ill. I have been so well since last month. I have a fever, a rotten fever, or rather a feverish weakness, that oppresses my mind as wearily as my body. All day and every day I suffer this frightful sense of threat and danger, this apprehension of coming ill, or approaching death, this presentiment which is doubtless the warning sign of lurking disease germinating in my blood and in my flesh. May 18. I have just consulted my doctor, for I was not getting any sleep. He found that my pulse is rapid, my eyes dilated, my nerves on the edge, but no alarming symptom of any kind. I am to take dutches and drink bromide of potassium. May 25. No change. My case is truly strange. As night falls, an incomprehensive uneasiness fills me, as if the night concealed a frightful menace directed at me. I dine in haste, then I try to read, but I don't understand the words. I can hardly make out the letters, so I walk backwards and forwards in my drawing room, oppressed by a vague fear that I cannot throw off, fear of sleeping and fear of my bed. About 10 o'clock, I go up to my room. The instant I am inside the room, I double lock the door and shut the windows. I am afraid. Of what? I never dreaded anything before. I open my cupboard, I look under my bed, I listen. Listen. To what? It's a queer thing, Dan. A mere physical ailment, some disorder in the blood, perhaps the jangling of a nerve thread, a slight congestion, the least disturbance in the functioning of this living machine of ours, so imperfect and so frail, can make a melancholic of the happiest of men and a coward of the bravest. Then I lie down and wait for sleep, as if I were waiting to be executed. I wait for it, dreading its approach. My heart beats, my legs tremble, my whole body shivers in the warmth of the bled clothes, until the moment I fall suddenly off sleep, like a man falling into deep and stagnant water dead to drown. Nowadays, I never feel the approach of this perfidious sleep that lurks near me, spying on me, ready to take me by the end. Shut my eyes, steal my strength. I sleep for a long time, 2 or 3 hours, then a dream. No, a nightmare seizes me. I feel that I am lying down and that I am asleep. I feel it and I know it. I feel too that someone approaches me, looks at me, touches me, climbs on my bed, kneels on my chest, takes my neck between his hand and squeezes with all his might, strangling me. I struggle madly in the grip of the frightful impotence that paralyzes us in dreams. I try to cry out, I can't. I try to move, I can't. Panting with the most frightful effort, I try to turn round to fling off this creature who is crushing and shocking me. I can't do it. And suddenly I wake up, terrified, covered with sweat. I light a candle. I am alone. The crisis is over. A crisis that happens every night. I fall at last into quiet sleep until the break. June 2. My case has grown worse. What can be the matter with me? Bromide is useless. Tortures are useless. Lately, by ways of wearing a body already quite exhausted, I went for a tramp in the forest of Rumar. At first I thought that the fresh air, the clear, sweet air, full of the scent of grass and trees, was pouring a new blood into my vein, and a new strength into my heart. I followed a broad glade, and then I turned towards Beauville by a narrow walk between 2 ranks of immensely tall trees that flung a thick green roof, almost a black roof, between the sky and me. A sudden shudder ran through me. Not a shudder of cold, but a strange shudder of anguish. I quickened my pace, uneasy at being alone in this wood, unreasonably, stupidly terrified by the profound solitude. Abruptly I felt that I was being followed, that someone was on my heels, as near, touching me. I swung round. I was alone. I saw behind me only the straight open walk, empty, high, terrifyingly empty. It stretched out in front of me too, as far as the eyes could see, as empty and frightening. I shut my eyes. Why? And I began to turn round on my heel at a great rate, like a top. I almost fell. Opened my eyes again. The trees were dancing, the earth was swaying. I was forced to sit down. Then I did not know now which way I had been walking. Strange thought. I didn't know anything at all. I took the right-hand way and found myself back in the avenue that had led me into the middle of the forest. June 3. The night has been terrible. I am going to go away for several weeks. A short journey will surely put me right. July 2. Home again. I'm cured. I have had, moreover, a delightful holiday. I visited Mont Saint-Michel, which I didn't know. What a vision one gets arriving at Avranches, as I did, towards the dusk. The town lies on a slope, and I was taken into the public garden at the end of the city. A cry of astonishment broke from me. A shoreless bay stretched out before me as far as eyes could see. It lay between opposing coasts that vanished in distant mist. And in the midst of this vast, tawny bar, under a gleaming golden sky, a strange hill, sombre and peaked, thrust up from the sand at its feet. The sun had just sunk, and on an horizon still righteous with colours was etched the outline of this fantastic rock that bore on its summit a fantastic monument. At daybreak I went out to it. The tide was low, as on the evening before, and as I drew near it the miraculous abbey grew in height before my eyes. After several hours walking, I reached a monstrous pile of stones that support the little city dominated by the great church. I climbed up the steep, narrow street. I entered the most wonderful Gothic dwelling made for God on this earth, as vast as a town, with innumerable low rooms hollowed out under the vaults and high galleries slung over a slender column. I entered this gigantic granite jewel, as delicate as a piece of lace, pierced everywhere by towers and airy belfries, where twisting staircase climb. Towers and belfries that by day against the blue sky and by night against the dark sky lift strange heads, bristling with chimera, devils, fantastic beasts, and monstrous flowers, and are linked together by slender carved arches. When I stood up on the top, I said to the monk who accompanied me, "What a glorious place you have here, father!" "We get strong winds," he answered, and we fell into talk as we watched the incoming sea run over the sand and cover it with a still cuirass. The monk told me stories, all the old stories of this place, legends, always legends. One of them particularly impressed me. The people of the district, those who lived on the Mont, declared that at night they heard voices on the sand, following by the bleating of two she-goats, one that called loudly and one calling softly. Unbelievable insisted that it was the crying of sea-birds, which at one and the same time resemble bleatings and the wailing of human voices. But benighted fishermen swore that they had met an old shepherd wandering on the dune between two tides round the little town flung so far out of the world. No one ever saw the head Eden in his clock. He led, walking in front of them, a goat with the face of a man and a she-goat with the face of a woman. Both of them have long white hair and talked incessantly, disputing in an unknown tongue, then abruptly ceased crying to begin a loud bleating. "Do you believe it?" I asked the monk. He murmured, "I don't know." "If," I went on, "there existed on the earth being others than ourselves, why have we not long ago learned to know them? Why have you yourself not seen them? Why have I not seen them myself?" He answered, Do we see the 100,000th part of all that exists? Think. There's the wind, the greatest force in nature, which throws down men, shatters buildings, uproot trees, stirs up the seas into watery mountain, destroys cliff, and tosses the tall ship against the shore. The wind that kills, whistle, groans, roar. Have you seen it? Can you see it? Nevertheless, it exists. Before his simple reasoning, I fell silent. This man was either a seer or a fool. I should not have cared to say which, but I held my peace. What he had just said I had often thought. July 4. It has surely caught me again. My old nightmares have come back. Last night I felt crouching on me someone who presses his mouth on mine and drinks my life between my lips. Yes, he sucked it from my throat like a leech. Then he rose from me, replete, and I awoke, so mangled, bruised, and feeble that I could not move. If this goes on many days more, I shall certainly go away again. July 5th. Have I lost my reason? What has just happened, what I saw last night, is so strange, but my head reels when I think of it. Following my invariable custom in the evening, I had locked my door. Then, feeling thirsty, I drank half a glass of water, and I happened to notice that my carafe was filling up right to its crystal stopper. I lay down after this and fell into one of my dreadful slumbers, from which I was jerked about 2 hours later by a shock more frightful than any of the others. Imagine a sleeping man who has been assassinated and who wakes with a knife through his lung, with the death rattle in his throat, covered with blood, unable to breathe and on the point of death, understanding nothing, and there you have it. When I finally recovered my sanity, I was thirsty again. I lit a candle and went towards the table where I had placed my carafe. I lifted it and held it over my glass. Not a drop ran out. It was empty. It was completely empty. At first I simply didn't understand, then all at once a frightful rush of emotions so overwhelmed me that I was forced to sit down, or say, rather that I fell into my chair. Then I leapt up again and looked around me. Then I sat down again, lost in surprise and fear, in front of the transparent crystal. I gazed at it with a fixed stare, seeking an answer to the riddle. My hands were trembling. Had someone drunk the water? Who? I? It must have been me. Who could it have been but me? So I was a somnambulist. All unaware I was living the mysterious double life that raises the doubt whether there be not two selves in us, or whether in moments where the spirit lies unconscious, an alien self, unknowable and unseen, inhabits the captive body that obeys this other self as it obeys us, obeys it more readily than it obeys us. Oh, can anyone understand my frightful agony? Can anyone understand the feeling of a sane-minded, educated, thoroughly rational man staring in abject terror through the glass of his carafe where the water had disappeared where he slept? I remained there until daylight, not daring to go back to bed. July 6. I'm going mad. My carafe was emptied again last night, or rather, I emptied it. But is it high? Is it high? Who can it be? Who? Oh my God. Am I going mad? Who will save me? July 10. I have just made some astonishing experiment. Listen. On the 6th of July, before lying down in bed, I placed on my table wine, milk, water, bread and strawberry. Someone drank. I drank all the water, and a little of the milk. Neither the wine nor the bread nor the strawberries were touched. On the 7th of July, I made the same experiment and then got the same result. On the 8th of July, I left out the water and the milk. Nothing was touched. Finally, on the 9th of July, I placed only the water and milk on my table, taking care to wrap the carafes in white muslin clothes and tie down the stoppers. Then I rubbed my lips, my bird, and my hands with a charcoal pencil and lay down. The usual overpowering sleep seized me, followed shortly by the frightful awakening. I had not moved. My bedclothes themselves bore no marks. The clothes wrapped around the bottles remained spotless. I untied the cord, shaking with fear. All the water had been drunk. All the milk had been drunk. Oh my God. I'm leaving for Paris at once. July 13, Paris. I suppose I lost my head during the last few days. I must be the sport of my disordered imagination, unless I really am a somnambulist or I've fallen under one of those indubitable but hitherto inexplicable influences that we call suggestions. Whatever that may be, my disordered came very near to lunacy, and 24 hours in Paris have been enough to restore my balance. Yesterday I went to the race and made various calls. I felt myself endowed with new vital strength, and I ended my evening at the Théâtre Français. They were presenting a play by the younger Dumas, and his alert, forceful intelligence completed my cure. There can be no doubt that loneliness is dangerous to active minds. We need to round us men who think and talk. When we live alone for a long period, we people the void with phantoms. I returned to the hotel in high spirits, walking along the boulevard. Amid the jostling of the crowd, I thought ironically on my terrors and on my hallucination of a week ago, when I had believed, that an invisible being dwelt in my body. How weak and shaken and speedily unbalanced our brains are immediately they are confronted by a tiny, incomprehensive fact. Instead of coming to a conclusion in these simple words, I do not understand because the cause eludes me. At once we imagine frightening mysteries and supernatural powers. July 14. Fête de la République. Bastille Day. I walked through the streets. The rockets and the flag filled me with a childish joy. At the same time, it is vastly silly to be joyous on a sad day by order of the government. The mob is an imbecile herd, as stupid in its patience as it is savage when roused. You say to it, enjoy yourself, and it enjoys itself. You say to it, go and fight your neighbor. It goes to fight. You say to it, vote for the emperor. It votes for the emperor. Then you say to it, vote for the republic. And then it votes for the republic. Its rulers are so bigoted, but instead of obeying man, they obey principle which can only be half-baked, sterile, and false in so much as they are principle, that is to say, ideas, reputed certain and immutable in this world where nothing is sure, since light and sound are both illusions. July 16. Yesterday I saw some things that have profoundly disturbed me. I dined with my cousin, Madame Sablé, whose husband commands the 17-6 light horse at Limoges. At her house I met two young men, one of whom was married, a Dr. Parent, who devotes himself largely to nervous illness and the extraordinary discoveries that are the outcome of the recent experiment in hypnotism and suggestion. He told us at length about the amazing result obtained by English scientists and by the doctor of the Nancy School. The fact that he put forward struck me as so fantastic that I confess myself utterly incredulous. We are, he declared, on the point of discovering one of the most important secrets of nature. I mean, one of the most important secrets on this earth, for there are certainly others as important away yonder in the stars. Since man began to think, since he learned to express and record his thought, he has felt the almost impalpable touch of mystery, impenetrable by his clumsy and imperfect senses. And he has tried to supplement the importance of his organic power by the force of his intelligence. While the intelligence was still in a rudimentary stage, this haunting sense of invisible phenomena clothed itself in the legend of wandering spirit, fairies, gnome, ghosts, and had the god myth itself, since our conception of the artificer creator, to whatever religion they belong, are really the most uninspired, the most unintelligent, the most unacceptable product of the fear-clouded brain of human beings. Or nothing is truer than that saying of Voltaire's, God has made man in his image, but man has retorted upon him in kind. But for a little over a century we have had a glimpse of a new knowledge. Mesmer and others have set our feet on a fresh path, and more specifically, during the last 4 or 5 years, we have actually reached a surprising result. My cousin, as incredulous as I, smiled. Dr. Parent said to her, "Oh, shall I try to put you to sleep, madame?" "Yes, do." She seated herself in an armchair, and he looked fixedly into her eyes, as if he were trying to fascinate her. As for me, I felt suddenly uneasy. My heart thumped, my throat contracted. I saw Madame Sable, eyes go heavy, her mouth twitch, her bosom rise and fall with her quick breathing. Within 10 minutes she was asleep. Go behind her, said the doctor. I seated myself behind her. He put her visiting cards in her hands and said to her, Here is a looking glass. What can you see in it? I see my cousin, she answered. What is he doing? He's twitching his moustache. And now? He's drawing a photograph from his pocket. Whose photograph is it? His. She was right, and this photograph had been sent me at my hotel that very evening. What is he doing in the photograph? He's standing with his hat in his hand. Evidently, she saw in this card this piece of white pasteboard, as she would have seen in a glass. The young woman, terrified, cried, That's enough! That's quite enough! But the doctor said authoritatively, You will get up tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Then you will call on your cousin at his hotel, and you will beg him to lend you 5,000 francs that your husband has asked you to get and will exact on his next leave. Then he woke her up. On my way back to the hotel, I thought about this curious séance, as I was assailed by doubts, not of the absolutely unimpeachable good faith of my cousin, whom since our childhood I had looked upon as my sister, but of the possibility of trickery on the doctor's part. Had he concealed the looking-glass in his hand and held it before the slumbering young woman when he was holding before her his visiting card? Professional conjurer do things as strange. I had reached the hotel by now, and I went to bed. Then, in the morning, towards 8:30, I was roused by a man who said to me, Madame Sablé wishes to speak to you at once, sir. I got hurriedly into my clothes and had her shown in. She seated herself, very agitated, her eyes downcast, and without lifting her veil said, I have a great favour to ask you, my dear cousin. What is it, my dear? I hate to ask it of you, and yet I must. I need desperately 5,000 francs. You? You need it? Yes, or rather my husband, who has laid it on me to get it. I was astonished as I stammered as I answered her. I wondered whether she or Dr. Parent were not actually making fun of me, whether it weren't a little comedy they had prepared beforehand and were acting very well. But as I watched her closely, my doubt vanished entirely. The whole affair was so distasteful to her that she was shaking with anguish, and I saw that her throat was quivering with sob. I knew that she was rich, and I added, What? Do you mean to say that your husband can't call on 5,000 francs? Come, think. Are you sure he told you to ask me for it? She hesitated for a few moments, as if she were making a tremendous effort to search her memory. Then she answered, Yes, I'm quite sure. Has he written to you? She hesitated again, reflecting, I guessed, at the tortured striving of her mind. She didn't know. She knew nothing except that she had to borrow 5,000 francs from me for her husband. Then she plucked up courage to lie. Yes, he has written to me. But when? You didn't speak to me about it yesterday. I got his letter this morning. Can you let me see it? No. It is very intimate, too personal. I've burnt it. Your husband must be in debt, then. Again, she hesitated, then answered, I don't know. I told her abruptly. The fact is, I can't lay my hand on 5,000 francs at the moment, my dear. A kind of agonised wail broke from her. I implore you, get it for me. She grew dreadfully excited, clasping her hands as if she were praying to me. The tone of her voice changed as I listened. She wept, stammering, torn with grief, goaded by the irresistible command that had been laid on her. Oh, I implore you to get it. If you knew how unhappy I am, I must have it today. I took pity on her. You shall have it at once, I promise you. Thank you, she cried. How kind you are. Do you remember, I went on, what happened at your house yesterday evening? Yes. Do you remember that Dr. Parent put you to sleep? Yes. Very well. He ordered you to come this morning and borrow 5,000 francs from me, and you are now obeying the suggestion. She considered this for a moment and answered, Because my husband wants it. I spent an hour trying to convince her, but I did not succeed in doing so. When she left, I ran to the doctor's house. He was just going out, and he listened to me with a smile. Then he said, Now, do you believe it? I must. Let's go and call on your cousin. She was already asleep on a daybed, overwhelmed with weariness. The doctor felt her pulse and looked at her for some time, one hand lifted towards her eyes that slowly closed under the irresistible compulsion of his magnetic force. When she was asleep. Your husband has no further need for 5,000 francs. You will forget that you begged your cousin to lend it to you, and if he speaks to you about it, you will not understand. Then he woke her up. I drew a note case from my pocket. Here's what you asked for this morning, my dear. She was so dumbfounded that I dared not press the matter. I did, however, try to rouse her memory, but she denied it fiercely. Thought I was making fun of her, and at last was ready to be angry with me. Back at the hotel, the experience has disturbed me profoundly that I could not bring myself to take lunch. July 19. I've told several people about this adventure and been laughed at for my pains. I don't know what to think now. The wise man says, perhaps. July 21. I dined at Bougival, then I spent the evening at the rowing club dance. There's no doubt that everything is a question of places and persons. To believe in the supernatural in the island of Grenouillère would be the height of folly. But at the top of Mont Saint-Michel, in the Indies, we are terrified under the influence of our surrounding. I'm going home next week. July 30. I've been home since yesterday. All is well. August 2. Nothing fresh. The weather has been glorious. I spent my day watching the Seine run past. August 4. The servants are quarreling among themselves. They declare that someone breaks the glasses in the cupboard at night. My man blames the cook, who blames the housemaid, who blames the other two. Who is the culprit? It would take a mighty clever man to find out. August 6. This time I am not mad. I have seen something. I've seen something. I've seen something. I have no more doubt. I've seen it. I'm still cold to my fingertip. My nerves are still raked with terror. I've seen it. At 2 o'clock, in broad daylight, I was walking in my rose garden between the autumn roses that are just coming out. As I paused to look at Géant de Bataille, which bore 3 superb flowers, I instinctively saw, right under my eyes, the stem of one of these roses bend, as if an invisible hand had twisted it, then break, as if the end had plucked it. Then the flower rose, describing in the air the curve that an arm would have made carrying it towards the mouth. Then it hung, suspended in the clear air, quite alone, motionless, a terrifying scarlet splash 3 paces from my eyes. I lost my head and flung myself on it, grasped it. My finger closed on nothing. It had disappeared. Then I was filled with a savage rage against myself. A rational, serious-minded man simply does not have such hallucination. But was it really an hallucination? I turned round to look for the flower, and my eyes fell on it immediately. It had just been broken off and was lying between the 2 roses that still remained on the branch. Then I went back to the house, my sense reeling. Now I was sure as I am that day follows night, that there lived my side. At my side an invisible being who fed on milk and water, who could touch things, take them, move them from one place to another, and though therefore with a material nature imperceptible to our senses, though it was, and living beside me, under my roof. August 7. I slept quietly. He had drunk the water from my carafe, but it did not disturb my sleep. I wonder if I am mad. Sometimes as I walk in the blazing sunshine along the river bank, I am filled with doubt of my sanity, not the vague doubt I have been feeling, but precise and uncompromised doubts. I have seen madmen. I have known men who are intelligent, lucid, even exceptionally clear-headed in everything in life, but on one point. They talked quite clearly, easily, and profoundly about everything until suddenly their mind ran on to the rocks of their madness and was there, rent in pieces, threw into the wind and foundered in the fearful raging sea, filled with surging waves, fog, squalls that we call sanity. I should certainly have thought myself mad, absolutely mad, if I were not conscious, if I were not perfectly aware of my state of mind, if I did not get to the bottom of it and analyze it with such complete clearness. I must be, in fact, no worse than a sane man troubled with hallucinations. That must be some unknown disturbance in my brain, one of those disturbances that modern physiologists are trying to observe and elucidate, and this disturbance had opened a deep gulf in my mind in the orderly and logical working of my thoughts. Similar phenomena take place in a dream that drags us through the most unreal phantasmagoria without sowing the least surprise in our minds, because the mechanism of judgment, the controlling censor, is asleep. The imaginative faculty wakes and works. Can one of the invisible strings that control my mental keyboard have become muted? Sometimes, after an accident, a man loses his power to remember proper names, or verbs, or figures, or only dates. The localization of all the different faculties of the mind is now proved. Is there anything surprising, therefore, in the idea that my power of examining the unreality of certain hallucinations has ceased to function in my brain just now? I thought of all this as I walked by the side of the river. The sunlight flung a mantle of light across the river, clothing the earth with beauty, filling my thought with love of life, of the swallows whose swift flight is a joy to my eyes, of the riverside grasses whose shudding whisper contents my ears. Little by little, however, I fell prey to an inexplicable uneasiness. I felt as though some force, an occult force, were paralyzing my movement, halting me, hindering me from going any further, calling me back. I was oppressed by just such an unhappy impulse to turn back as one feels when a beloved person has been left at home, ill, and one is possessed by a foreboding that the illness has taken a turn for the worse. So, in spite of myself, I turned back, sure that I should find bad news waiting at my house, a letter or a telegram. There was nothing, and I was left more surprised than uneasy that if I had yet another fantastic visions. August 8. Yesterday I spent a frightful night. It did not manifest itself again, but I felt him near me, spying on me, watching me, taking possession of me, dominating me, and more to be feared when he hid himself in this way than if he gave notice of his constant invisible presence by supernatural phenomena. However, I slept. August 9. Nothing, but I am afraid. August 10. Nothing. What will happen tomorrow? August 11. Still nothing. I can't remain in my home any longer with this fear and this thought in my mind. I shall go away. August 10. 10 o'clock in the evening. I have been wanting to go away all day. I can't. I have been wanting to carry out the easy, simple act that will set me free. Go out. Get into my carriage. To go to Rouen. I can't. Why? August 13. Under the affliction of certain maladies, all the resources of one's physical being seems crushed. All one's energy exhausted, one's muscle relaxed, one's bones grown as soft as flesh, and one's flesh turned to water. In a strange and wretched fashion, I suffer all of this pain in my spiritual being. I have no strength, no courage, no control over myself, no power, even to summon up my will. I can will nothing, but someone wills for me, and I obey. August 14. I am lost. Someone has taken possession of my soul and is master of it. Someone orders all of my act, all my movement, all my thoughts. I am no longer anything. I'm only a spectator, enslaved and terrified by all things I do. I wish to go out, I cannot. It does not wish it, and it remains. I remain, dazed, trembling in the armchair where it keeps me seated. I desire no more than to get up, to raise myself so that I can think. I am master of myself again. I can't do it. I'm riveted to my seat, and my seat is fast to the ground in such fashion that no force could lift us. Then, all at once, I must go to the bottom of my garden and pick strawberries and eat them. Oh my God! Oh my God! Is there a God? If there is one, deliver me, save me, help me, pardon me, pity me. Have mercy on me. Oh, I suffer. Oh, I am tortured. Oh, terrible disease. August 15. Well, think how my poor cousin was possessed and overmastered when she came to borrow 5,000 francs from me. She submitted to an alien will that had entered into her, as if it were another soul, a parasite, tyrannical soul. Is the word coming to an end? But what is this being, this invisible being who is ruling me, this unknowable creature, this wanderer from a supernatural race? So unseen ones exist. Then why is it that since the world began they have never manifested themselves in so unmistakable a fashion as they are now manifesting themselves to me? I have never read of anything like the things that are happening under my roof. If I could only leave it, if I could go away, fly far away and return no more, I should be saved, but I can't. August 16. Today I was able to escape for 2 hours, like a prisoner who finds the door of his cell accidentally left open. I felt that I was suddenly set free, that he had withdrawn himself, ordered the horse to be put in a carriage as quickly as possible. Then I reached Rouen. Oh, what a joy I was to find myself able to tell a man, go to Rouen, and be obeyed. I stopped at the library and I asked them to lend me the long treatise of Dr. Hermann Erestrauss on the unseen inhabitant of the antique and modern worlds. Then, just as I was getting back into my carriage with the words, "To the station," on my lips, I shouted. I didn't speak. I shouted in a voice so loud that the passers-by turned round. "Home!" And I fell, overwhelmed with misery, onto the cushion of my carriage. He had found me again, and taken possession once more. August 17. What a night! What a night! Nevertheless, it seems to me that I ought to congratulate myself. I read until 1 o'clock in the morning. Hermann Erestrauss, a doctor of philosophy and theogony, has written an account of all invisible beings who wander among men, or have been imagined by man's mind. He described their origin, their domains, their power, but none of them is the least like the being who haunts me. It is as if the man, the thinker, has had a foreboding vision of some new being, mightier than himself, who shall succeed him in this world, and, in his terror, feel him draw near, and unable to guess at the nature of this master. He has created all the fantastic crowd of occult being, dim phantoms, born of fear. Well, I read until 1 o'clock, then I seated myself near my open window to cool my head and my thought in the gentle air of the night. It was fine and warm. In other days, how I should have loved such a night. No moon. The stars wavered and glittered in the black depth of the sky. Who dwells in these worlds? What form of life? What living creatures? What animals or plants do they hold? What more than we do the thinkers in those far universes know? What more can they do than we? What do they see that we do not know of? Perhaps one of them, some day, or others, will cross the gulf of space and appear on our earth as a conqueror, just as in the olden days the Normans crossed the sea to subdue wealthy nations. We others are so infirm, so defenseless, so ignorant, so small, on this grain of dust that resolves and crumbles in a drop of water. So, dreaming, I fell asleep in the fresh evening air. I slept for about 40 minutes and opened my eyes again without moving, roused by I know not what vague and strange emotion. At first, I saw nothing. Then, all at once, I thought that the page of a book lying open on my table had turned over of itself. Not a breath of air came in at the window. I was surprised and I sat, waiting. About 4 minutes later, I saw with my own eyes another page come up and turn back on the preceding one, as if a finger had folded it back. My armchair was empty, seemed empty, but I realized that he was there, he, sitting in my place and reading. In one wild spring, like the spring of a maddened beast, resolved to eviscerate his trainer, I crossed the room to seize him and crush him and kill him. But before I'd reached it, my seat turned right over, as if he had fled before me. My table rocked, my lamp fell and was extinguished, and my window slammed shut, as if I had surprised a malefactor who had flung himself out in the darkness, tugging at the sashes with all of his force. So he had run away. He had been afraid of me. Then tomorrow or the day after or some day I should be able to get him between my finger and crush him against the ground. Don't dogs sometimes bite and fly at their master's throat? August 18. I have been thinking things over all day. Oh yes, I will obey him, satisfy his impulses, do his will, make myself humble, submissive, servile. He is the stronger, but an hour will come. August 19. I know now. I know everything. I've just read the following in the Revue du Monde Scientifique. A strange piece of news reaches us from Rio de Janeiro. Madness, an epidemic of madness comparable to the contagious outburst of dementia that attacked the people of Europe in the Middle Age, is raging at this day in the district of Sao Paulo. The distracted inhabitants are quitting their house, deserting their villages, abandoning their fields, declaring themselves to be pursued, possessed, and ordered about like a human heir by certain invisible but tangible beings, vampires of some kind, who feed on their vitality while they sleep, in addition to drinking milk and water without apparently touching any other form of food. Professor Don Pedro Enriquez, accompanied by several learned doctors, has set out for the district of Sao Paulo to study on the spot the origins and the form taken by this surprising madness, and to suggest that to the Emperor such measures appear to him most likely to restore the delirious inhabitant to sanity. I remember the lovely three-masted Brazilian that sailed past my window on the 8th of last May on her way up to the Seine. I thought her such a bonny white gay goat. The being was on board her, come from over the sea, where his race is born. He saw me. He saw my house, white like a sheep, and he jumped from the vessel to the bank. Oh my God. Now I understand. I know. The reign of man is at an end. He is here, whom the drowning fears of primitive peoples taught me to dread. He who was exorcised by a troubled priest, evoked in the darkness of night by a wizard who yet never saw him materialize, to whom the forbidding vision of the masters who have passed through this world lent all the monstrous or gracious form of gnome, spirits, jinns, fairies, and hobgoblins. Primitive terror visualized him in the crudest form. Later wiser men have seen him more clearly. Mesmer foresaw him, and it is 10 years since doctors made the most exact inquiries into the nature of his power. Even before, he exercises it himself. They have been making a plaything of this weapon of the new god, this imposition of a mysterious will on the enslaved soul of a man. They called it magnetism, hypnotism, suggestion, anything you like. I have seen them amusing themselves with this horrible power like foolish children. Oh, to us, cursed is man, he is here, what is his name? It seemed as if you were shouting his name in my ear, and I cannot hear. Yes, he's shouting. I'm listening. I can't bear again. Tell me, the Horla. I heard the Horla. Is it he? The Horla is here. The vulture has been used to eat the dove, the wolf to eat the sheep, the lion to devour the sharp-horned buffalo, man to kill the lion with arrow, spear, and gun, but the Horla is going to make of man what we have made of the horse and the cow, his thing, his servant, and his food, by the mere force of his will. Oh, to us! But sometimes the beast rebels and kills his tamer. I too want. I could, but I must know him, touch him, see him. Scientists say that the eye of the beast is not like ours, and do not see as ours does. And my eye fails to show me this newcomer who's oppressing me. Why? The words of the monk of Mont Saint-Michel come to my mind. Do we see the 100,000th part of all that exists? Think. There's the wind, the greatest force in nature, which throws down men, shatter buildings, uproot trees, stir up the sea into watery mountain, destroys cliff, and tosses the tall ship against the shore. The wind that kills whistle, grounds roar. Have you seen it? Can you see it? Nevertheless, it exists. And I considered further. My eye is so weak, so imperfect, that it does not distinguish even solid bodies that have the transparency of glass. If a looking glass that has no foil backing bars my path, I hurl myself against it as a bird that has got into a room break its head on the window pane. Or many other things deceive and mislead my eye. Then what is there to be surprised at in its failure to see a new body that offers no resistance to the passage of light? A new being. Why not? He must assuredly come. What should we be the last? Why is he not seen of our eyes as are all beings created before us? Because his form, it is neither perfection, his body finer and completer than ours which is so weak, some clumsily conceived, anchored by organs, always tired, always breaking down like a too complex mechanism, which lives like a vegetable or a beast, drawing its substance with difficulty from the air, the herbs of the field and meat, a living machine subject to sickness, deformity and corruption, drawing its breath in pain, ill-regulated, simple and fantastic, ingeniously ill-made, clumsily and delicately erected. The mere thought, the mere rough sketch of a being who could become intelligent and noble. There have been so few kinds created in the world, from the bivalve to man. Why not one more, when we reach the end of a period of time that separates each successive appearance of a species from that which appeared before it? Why not more? Why not also new kinds of tree, bearing monstrous flower, blazing with colours and filling all the countryside with their perfume? Why not other elements than fire, air, earth, and water? There are only four sources of our being. What a pity! Why not 40, 400, 4,000? How poor, niggardly, and brutish is life, grudgingly given, meanly conceived, and stupidly executed. Consider the grace of the elephant, the hippopotamus, the elegance of the camel. You bid me consider the butterfly, a wicked flower. I can imagine one vast 100 worlds, with wings for whose shape, beauty, colour, and sweep I cannot find any words. But I see it. It goes from stars to stars, refreshing and perfuming them with the soft, gracious wind of its passing. And the people of the upper air watch it pass in an ecstasy of joy. What is the matter with me? It is he, the Horla, who's haunting me, filling my head with these absurdities. He is in me, he has become my soul. I will kill him. August 19. I will kill him. I've seen him. I was sitting at my table yesterday evening, making a great show of being very absorbed in writing. I knew quite well that he would come and prowl round me, very close to me, so close that I might be able to touch him, sitting, perhaps. And then I should be filled with the strength of desperation. I should have hands, knees, chest, face, teeth to strangle him, crush him, tear him, rend him. With every sense quivering, alert, I watched for him. I had lit both my lamps and the 8th candle on my chimney piece, as if I thought I should be more likely to discover it by this bright light. In front of me was my bed, an old oak four-poster. On my right, the fireplace. On my left, my door carefully shut after I'd left it open for a long time to attract him. Behind me, a very tall cupboard with a mirror front, which I used every day to shave and dress by, and in which I always regarded myself from head to foot wherever I passed in front of it. Well, I pretended to write to deceive him, because he was spying on me too, and all at once I was certain that he was reading over my shoulder, that he was there, his breath on my ear. I stood up, my hand outstretched, and turned round so quickly that I almost fell. What do you think? The room, as light as day, and I could not see myself in my looking glass. It was empty, transparent, deep, filled with light. I was not reflected in it, and I was standing in front of it. I could see the white, limpid expanse of glass from top to bottom, and I stared at it with a distraught gaze. I daren't move another step. I daren't make another movement. Nevertheless, I felt that he was there, whose immortal body had swallowed up my reflection, but that he would elude me still. How frightened I was. A month later, my reflection... A moment later, my reflection began to appear in the depth of the looking glass, in a sort of mist, as if I were looking at it through water. This water seemed to flow from left to right slowly, so that, moment by moment, my reflection emerged more distinctly. It was like the passing of an eclipse. The thing that was concealing me appeared to possess no sharply defined outline, but a kind of transparent opacity that gradually cleared. At last I could see myself from head to toe, just as I saw myself every day when I looked in the glass. I had seen him. The horror of it is still on me, making me shudder. August 20. How can I kill him, since I can't touch him? Poison? But he would see me put it in the water, and beside, would our poison affect any material body? No, it would certainly not. Then how? How? August 21. I have sent for a locksmith from Rouen and ordered him to fit my room with iron shutters, such as they have in certain hotels in Paris, to keep out robbers. He is to make me also a similar sort of door. Everyone thinks me a coward, but I must care for that. September 10. Rouen. Hotel Continental. It is done. It is done. But is he dead? My brain reels with what I've seen. Yesterday, the locksmith put my iron shutter in my iron door, and I left everything open until midnight, although it began to get cold. All at once I felt his presence, and I was filled with joy, mad joy. I rose slowly to my feet and walked about the room for a long time, so that he should suspect nothing. Then I took off my boot and carelessly drew on my slipper. Then I closed my iron shutters, and, sauntering back towards the door, I double-locked it too. Then I walked back to the window and secured it with a padlock, putting the key in my pocket. Suddenly I realized that he was prowling anxiously around me. He was afraid now and commanding me to open them for him. I almost yelled it. I did not yell, but leaning on the door, I set it ajar just wide enough for me to slip out backwards, and as I am very tall, my head touched the lintel. I was sure that he could not have gone out, and I shut him in, alone, all alone. Thank God I had him. Then I ran downstairs in the drawing room, which is under my room. I took both my lamps and emptied the oil all over the carpet and the furniture, everything, and I set it on fire, and I fled after having double-locked the main door. And I went and hid myself at the bottom of my garden in a grove of laurel. How long it took, how long! Everything was dark, silent, still. Not a breath of air, not a star. Mountains of unseen clouds that lay so heavily on my spirit. I kept my gaze fixed on the house and waited how long it took. I was beginning to think that the fire had died out of itself, or that he had put it out, when one of the lower windows fell in under the fierce breath of the fire, and a flame, a great red and a yellow flame, a long curling caressing flame, leaped up the white wall and pressed its kiss on the roof itself. A flood of light poured over the trees, branches, leaves, and with that shudder, a shudder of fear ran through them. The birds woke, a dog howled. I thought the dawn was at hand. In a moment, 2 more windows burst into flame, and I saw that the lower half of my house was now one frightful furnace. But a cry, a frightful piercing, agonized cry, a woman cry, stabbed the night, and 2 skylights opened. I had forgotten my servants. I saw their distraught faces and their widely waving arms. Then, frantic with terror, I began to run towards the village, shouting, "Help! Help! Fire! Fire!" I met people already on their way to the house, and I turned back with them to look at it. By now the house was no more than a horrible, magnificent funeral pyre, a monstrous pyre lighting up the whole earth, a pyre that was consuming men and consuming him, my prisoner, the new being, the new master, the Horla. The whole roof fell in with a sudden crash, and a volcano of flames leaped to the sky. Through all the windows open on the furnace, I saw the fiery vat, and I reflected that he was there, in this oven, dead. Dead? Perhaps his body, perhaps that body through which light fell could not be destroyed by the methods that kills our body. Suppose he's not dead. Perhaps only time has power over the invisible and dreadful one. Why should this transparent, unwearable bodies, this body of spirit, fear, sickness, wound, infirmity, premature destruction, the source of all human dread? After man, the Horla, after him who can die any day, any hour, any moment, by accident of all kinds, comes he who can only die in his appointed day, hour, and moment, when he has attained the limit of his existence. No,